Hi, I'm Jennifer,
I'm Mike.
And I'm Andrea, and
and we're not
Saint.
saints, but we are definitely learning from
We got to
them
get that synchronized one of these days.
one of these days.
We're not saints.
Yeah, maybe not.
We're not saints. One or the other.
Anyway, all I
In the
can
middle.
tell you is that we love learning about them. We do have lots of discussions. I do like it when we got, did you hear this about this saint? Did you know this about this saint? Like it's been exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what is so exciting about this saint, at least for me, is that the one we're talking about, no one knew her for 1,500 years after her death. And that's amazing. So it wasn't actually her life itself. It was what happened after her life. But so when I started, I'm like, oh, now that I know so much about the Golden Legend and the 14 Holy Helpers, I'm sure she would be in one of them. Well, no, she wasn't, because you know what? No one knew she existed. And that's what I found kind of fascinating. Her tomb wasn't discovered till 1802 in Rome in the catacombs. And they moved her in 1805 to a small little town outside of Naples called Mungano. And it was when she was in Mungano that these miracles would happen. And I think that's what fascinated to me. I wanted to know more about these miracles and about these visions and about what happened. And one of my favorite was a French woman named Paulina, and I got kicked out of French class, Pauline Géricault, so who was suffering from a serious heart condition, and she prayed for Saint Philomena's intercession, and she was completely cured. Actually, I think when we go to Italy this summer, this might be one of our stops. I really think we need to go there.
Still unfair that you guys are going without me.
I know, one day. But at the same time that these miracles were happening, there was a nun, and I think there were two others, but the one that I was fascinated by was Saint Maria Luisa, who had visions of Saint Philomena, and Saint Philomena came to her and told her her life story. And when she was present with the nun said she could feel the love and the light. And I think she was known as Little Bright Light or something more like that. And she could feel the presence of Jesus so strong around this young girl. And another great supporter who I think we'll talk about is in France. There was another priest named Saint John Vianney, and he was a very humble parish priest who I think maybe one day we need to research him a little bit more. And thousands of people came to him for healing, and he accredited all of the miracles to Saint Philomena. So I don't know. That's what, to me, makes her story so fascinating, is that she was a saint who was hidden for centuries, and suddenly, through prayer, miracles, and all the lives she touched, she became one of the most well-known saints. So, Mike, Andrea, I'm going to turn the mic to you guys so that we can talk more of the history and all the other fun things we've learned.
Right. She was born in the 4th century to a Greek king, and her mother was the queen, obviously. And she dedicated her life early to Jesus Christ at age 11. And then her father's kingdom was threatened by a Roman emperor that was wanting to just take it over, and their father pleaded with this guy not to do it. And when this emperor saw this young girl, Saint Philomena, he fell in love with Philomena because she was
the lady of the hour.
even at 11 years old. Apparently, she was quite stunning,
and she was a Greek princess,
Yeah,
just saying.
but the Philomena told this
Philomena
was not going to have it because she had already gave her life to Jesus Christ, and she wasn't going to be persuaded. But he was furious and said, I will marry this girl, basically, and I'm going to torture her until she gives in and renounces her faith.
We've heard this story before.
Mm-hmm.
So he beat her severely, threw her back into jail, and the angels came and cleaned her up and healed all of her wounds, and she was more beautiful. Then he put an anchor around her neck and threw her in the river. The angels cut the anchor rope. She came out unharmed. So then he shot her with arrows. The arrow wounds over the night were all healed. She was even more beautiful. So he's enraged at this point. So off with her head. As
Again,
usual.
one of the off with our headers.
These Roman guys really like the off with the head stuff.
I know.
So it was quite fascinating that she endured all this stuff, went through all that pain and suffering just to keep her faith.
Right.
As shows that people do that.
Yeah.
And that's the part of her story that was, I guess, recognized through private revelation through Sister Maria Luisa de Jesus. So whenever you're telling the story of the kingdom and the vow of virginity and how her family went to Rome and she suffered though and was tortured and eventually martyred, that was all a private revelation by Sister Maria Luisa. And I think it's important for us to kind of tell people what private revelations are, because there's public revelations and private revelations in the Catholic Church. So during this study of Saint Philomena, it kind of comes up just by way of learning about her, I want to use air quotes, legend. And then we have the discovery and the accounts of her that were recognized in other forms. So private revelation, the church will draw a line between public and private revelation. Public revelations are what's binding for all Christians, and it's what was completed with the death of the last apostle. Private revelation has continued, but that's covered in the catechism where it's addressed. It says, and this is a quote from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and it says, throughout the ages, there have been so-called private revelations, some of which are recognized by the authority of the Church. They do not belong, however, to the deposit of faith. It's not their role to improve or complete Christ's definitive revelation, but to help live more fully by it in a certain period of history. So we can discern these revelations ourselves and we can choose to follow them and believe in them, but it's not that it's binding by the church.
Correct.
Which explains why there's been so much controversy. I want to say controversy, that's just the word that came to mind, around Philomena, where she's given a feast day, then it's taken away. She wasn't formally canonized, but we still call her a saint. So what's it all about? What's it all about, Alfie?
I was going to sing that too. Oh my goodness.
Dang it, I wish we could have harmonized better than our we're not saints. But what does this all mean? I mean, it's something that we have to discern for ourselves. And one of the first things I learned about Saint Philomena was just through a candle that we have at our church bookstore, through Saint Candles. And there's one that's named after Philomena, and it smells like lavender, and it's really just a wonderful smell if you like lavender. But it just says on the candle that she's the patron saint for babies. And I was like, what's that about? So as we're diving more into her history, into her, again, air quotes, legend that was told through Sister Maria Luisa, we can kind of decide what we want to take in about her history and of her recollection.
And did you guys, because I was so fascinated because of some of her miracles, did you look? I mean, there was a little boy who was 8 who died, and the mother prayed for Philomena's intercession, and he came back to life. There was the woman who had cancer so bad in her hand, and it was getting ready, and she was a noble woman, and they were getting ready to take off her hand, and they brought a relic from Saint Philomena, and the woman prayed all night long, felt the same thing. When I was reading about what she felt through the night, it reminded me of what Sister Maria Luisa was also receiving, that light, that love, and she was healed completely the next day. And after, like I said, no one knew about this young little girl.
Well,
too.
Right. And I mean, so her resting place was unknown for approximately 1600 years. There wasn't that historical record. There was just that account from Sister Maria. And whenever her tomb was sealed, and it was in Priscilla, Rome. Is that what you had too?
Yeah. Well, in the catacombs, yes.
The catacombs of Priscilla, Rome.
Right.
And in 1802, the workers' pick struck the terracotta, and it was at that point accepted that the tiles were rearranged, and it said, "Peace be with you, Philomena." But there were also symbols that were engraved on the tomb of palm and arrows, anchors, and
Anchor.
lily.
And they found dried blood.
Yes. So it was taken to be blood, and then they were placed in the relic treasury. And then it was 1805, Father Francesco de Lucia. He was a young priest, and that's when
He took her to Mongiano.
Right. So the Pope
Yes.
the Pope had granted his request and donated those relics of Philomena before he reached Mongiano.
Right.
They were displayed in Naples. And then you have the miracles being recorded by 1805 and onward at Mongiano. But he's the one, and it's all, I think it's great. It's almost like when a loved one dies and you're just trying to keep their light alive and you're trying to keep their spirit living on. Had it not been for what Sister Maria Lucia had experienced, and had it not been for Father de Lucia to believe in Philomena and do what he did for her, to all these people kind of pushing her history and her legacy onward, he was the one, Father de Lucia was the one to document those healings.
Right.
And so there was a lawyer that was paralyzed for 6 weeks, and he carried himself to the relics. Then he ended up walking home. And then the woman's hand, I read about that one, how it vanished overnight. And then the shrine at Magnano, rapidly, it just became this place of pilgrimage for people.
And it still is.
But
Yeah.
had those other, I think it's really amazing, like had those other people not kept her story alive and kept on believing that, this woman, she existed, she went through this torture, maybe those appearances or those miracles wouldn't have been possible.
Exactly.
And it wasn't until 1833 that Sister Maria Luisa had the vision of Philomena, and she heard her voice, and Philomena told her her story, and it's much of what we've covered today about the quote, the legend of Philomena. But 3 separate people in different places also received these accounts.
Visions.
In visions, right. And the Holy Office approved the revelations as private revelations, not public, and we already covered the difference between those. But in 1833, the Holy Office approved these revelations. And then in 1837, Pope Gregory approved the public veneration of Philomena. And then her feast day, which was there, and then it was taken away, and people can celebrate her if they want. But he gave her a title, and she became known as the wonder worker of the 19th century. So I think other saints really began to show their devotion to her. There were other saints like Padre Pio. Padre Pio spoke up for her because when the doubts arose about her tomb being tampered with, he said that those doubts were just fruits of the demon. And it's kind of like saying, oh, it's just the devil. And Saint John Vianney.
He was in a small town, a very humble priest who had lots of healings, and he gave all of the credit to the intercession of Saint Philomena. Now Mike's got me.
Philomena.
Now Mike's got me saying it wrong.
Philomena.
Saint Philomena, and yeah.
I did want to jump back to when the Pope had approved and raised her confraternity to an archconfraternity, and then Pope St. Pius X raised it to a universal archconfraternity. So when you reach these confraternities, it just means that you're officially recognized as a Catholic lay group organized around a particular devotion. So you could be organized around a saint or a work of mercy like the Rosary, the Blessed Sacrament, or a Sacred Heart. I think that also adds to this complication of seeing Philomena as your typical saint, because so many have honored her in different ways, and her story went through all of these twists and turns that obviously these doubts are going to come up, but it kind of brings us back to, what do you believe personally, and what are you going to discern about your own beliefs of this particular saint? So that's why I think it's important to talk about.
Well, we have really learned a lot today, Andrea. What are our Bible verses?
So the Bible verse today that's reminiscent of Saint Philomena is from Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. And it says, "Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life." And I think,
Oh my God, that is a really powerful.
Wow.
I just got chills.
I know, and
You really picked a good one there.
I think
Oh my God, I got goosebumps all over.
I think it's such a good way to reminisce of Saint Philomena, because in her legend or in her story, however we want to believe it or think about it, she was not afraid to the point of her death. She did suffer and she believed. And she knew what was coming. So she was warned that this was going to happen when she denied the emperor. So her choosing to be faithful, even to the point of death, and I'll give you the crown of life. But then even after death, she was tested. Her history has been tested over the years, but still people choose to follow. And she has people that are devoted to her or have been devoted to her over time and have believed in her intercession. So the promise was made that, if you're faithful to the point of death, you'll be given that crown of life. And I think it's proven true for Philomena.
I think you nailed it. You are truly amazing. Oh my gosh. At the end of the day, saints are not famous people because we know every detail about them. They're beloved because they love Jesus and they live their life for Jesus, and they were tortured, abused, all in the name of, in Jesus. So this week, if you're worried about a child, perhaps praying for a grandchild or hoping for a healing yourself or facing something that feels bigger than what you can even handle, maybe you ask Saint Philomena to pray with you. As I said, we're not saints, we're learning from them. And Saint Philomena reminds us that even a little life hidden from the world can shine with the light of Christ.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Thanks, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Until then,
we're not saints.
We're not saints. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of We're Not Saints. For more of the We're Not Saints shenanigans and behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at We're Not Saints 1. That's We're Not Saints 1, without the apostrophe. And be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear from you. So leave us a comment or a review, or contact us by email at we'reNotSaints1@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to have a great companion to your weekly saint studies with us, you can purchase a copy of my books. Are You There, Mary? How to Resurrect in Love After Loss, Finding Love in the Confessional, or When Vice Happens. Available as a Kindle version or paperback on Amazon.
All these links will be provided in the description of this episode. And don't forget to tune in next Wednesday for our weekly dose of saints. God bless you.
Should you read it again with more intonation?
No.
It was very Mike.